أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم شكرا سगला अपना तिजारत राबियानो legal presentation series na pehla presentation में आया छो inshallah we'll have 3 or 4 presentations out महीना में तो आज नो presentation છે the partnership deed applied in real life. So Ajay will go over key principles of partnership, the partnership agreement, corporate governance and best practices. Napachi at the end we'll have time for question and answers. So of course, attorneys no presentation Cheto, you guys wouldn't believe we're attorneys if we didn't have fine print. So the information provided in this presentation is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice. Although 4 of the 5 presenters today are attorneys, we are not your attorneys. So if you need assistance with anything that you are working on for your business, please contact one of us or any other attorney for help with your specific legal matter. We will be happy to take your money. And then finally, we're attorneys, we're not experts on Shariat. तो शरीयत में कोई भी सवाल हो तो प्लीज जनाब आमने साहब या बुजुर्ग कोई खिदमत गुजारने सवाल कर दो. तो आज ना presenters थे मुल्ला मुर्तज़ा भाई सुट्टरवाला. Murzah Bhai attended the University of Chicago School of Law and graduated in 2006, back when I was in high school. He started his career as a corporate lawyer with Latham and Watkins in Washington, D.C., and then he moved to Dubai and moved to another firm, Clifford Chance, in Saudi Arabia, before finally moving back to Houston and starting his own firm. But Mariam bin Haider, who graduated from Harvard Law School and is a senior associate at Vincent & Elkins. Mariam bin focuses on mergers and acquisitions, public and advising public and private companies in various transactions. And then Zainab bin Hashmi is a corporate associate at Latham Watkins. She represents clients in strategic transactions, including public and private mergers and acquisitions. She also attended Harvard Law School, and before attending law school, she was a licensed CPA. And finally, I am a corporate associate at Kroll and Mooring, where I focus on public and private companies, acting as outside general counsel and advising in mergers and acquisitions. Before coming to Kroll and Mooring, I was the general counsel of a rocket company called Firefly Aerospace, and taught a course at the University of Texas School of Law about practicing in the space economy. So finally, Ajnu, going into today's presentation, Ajnu topic is the partnership deed. So the partnership deed che tijarat rabia tayar ki ruche, and it's based on Babul Buyu, Mukhtasarul Athar, and Sayyidina Mohan Burhandi Naka, and Sayyidina Mufaddal Sifuli Naka, and Bayan Mubarak. The purpose of this deed is to assist Mu'mineen in forming and maintaining valid partnerships. And it does this by helping partners think through various aspects of your business before you go into business or while you are operating your business, and then putting those aspects in writing. Now, writing Mamukwan was very important because putting things in writing helps everyone understand exactly what the guidelines of running the business are. It helps prevent disputes, and in the event of dispute, it helps resolve disputes quickly. The partnership deed is also there to help ensure that your business is in line with Sharia. As I mentioned before, Tijarat Rabia Tayar Kucha based on Asbaq and Maulana Bayan. And so if you follow the deed and you follow the questions and prompts within the deed, you will be conducting business in line with. Most importantly, it will help once we complete the deed. You will submit the deed for Raza Mubarak, and that way you will be running your business with the barakat of Akamoyani Raza. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Zainab bin, who will go over some key principles of partnerships.
Shukran, Idris Bhai. Salams, everyone. I'm Zainab. As Idris Bhai mentioned, we'll start with a brief discussion of the key principles to keep in mind when forming and operating as a partnership. As an initial matter, a partnership is defined as the relationship between persons or entities by contract who have agreed to share in the profits and losses of a business. Either natural persons or other business entities such as an LLC that you may be the sole owner of can be a partner. The business may be carried on by all partners, or it can also be the case where one partner or a subset of the partners acts on behalf of everyone. In the definition, a key concept here is the existence of a contract that defines that relationship. So whether oral or in writing, we of course emphasize the need for a written contract, which we'll get into in this presentation. So for the partnership agreement to constitute a valid contract, all partners must be in mutual agreement regarding the terms and provisions that are contained within such an agreement. So mutual agreement is a key principle here. All partners must also enter into such agreement by free will. What that means is no one should be forced or pressurized to enter into such contract. Any circumstances that raise concerns regarding coercion or duress do throw the validity of the contract into question. All partners must be baligh. This requirement is per wazarat, but from a legal perspective, generally, contracts signed by minors are not legally binding. And lastly, all partners must be of sound mind when entering into such agreement. One clarifying note here is that a partnership entails that relationship between persons or entities who are, as mentioned, a party to the agreement. So not just by virtue of a certain person's status or involvement in the business. For example, a family member who is not technically by agreement a part of the business would not be considered a partner, even if they are working for it or advising the business in any capacity. And such family member would not share the rights and authorities of partners in the business. Now, one can imagine misunderstandings in this regard that can occur. So partners should remain mindful of making this clear as to who are the partners in the business. And of course, the best way to do so is to document that in the form of a partnership agreement. Next slide, yes. A few points here regarding certain to-dos prior to forming a partnership. We'll start with that. It is very important for all partners to have detailed discussions among themselves prior to officially forming their partnership. Now, such discussions should not only encompass conversations regarding the mission and goals of the company or its products or services, but also details regarding the planned day-to-day business operations, financial forecasts or projections, budgets, discussions around capital investment, etc. These will be further discussed in this presentation, but it is recommended that the partner should commission a feasibility study or at a minimum prepare a business plan in writing. And most importantly, the partners should obtain Raza Mubarak before officially forming the partnership. We'll expand on this a little bit further in this presentation as well. Another key principle here is that partners owe fiduciary duties to each other and to their business. I won't really go into details as these mainly pop up as legal concepts if disputes arise, but wanted to make the point that similar to how Sharia provides guiding principles and objective rules regarding permissible and impermissible activities in a business, similarly, fiduciary duties in a business require partners to make careful, informed decisions, act in the best interest of their company, enter into transactions in good faith, etc. The point is that there are legal duties imposed on business partners under law. So floundering those can result in counterparties to a contract having the ability to, sue for breach of contract, for example. Next slide. So stepping back a little bit, another important decision that business partners should consider in detail prior to formation are the various business structures available under Texas law. These entity choices are commonly available in other jurisdictions as well. Now, this is an important decision because the various entity types have their own respective advantages and disadvantages. And these definitions are, under Texas law, but we have the general partnership and the limited partnership structure, which have their own corporate formalities. I won't really go into detail here, but on the next slide, most usually choose the LLP structure, which is the limited liability partnership, or the LLC structure, which is the limited liability company choice of entity. Both of these do provide pass-through tax treatment, meaning it doesn't have double taxation, which is the case for corporations. LLPs and LLCs also provide limited liability for its owners. What that means is that the owners of such entity choice are not personally liable for the debts and obligations of the business. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, there can be situations where if there's, for example, a breach of fiduciary duty, there can be what we call in legal terms piercing of the veil. But the main point here that I'd like to mention is that these structures do require certain corporate formalities in order to remain in good standing. So at the beginning, you want to kind of, I'll just briefly go over those corporate formalities, as a brief matter here. At the beginning, you want to ensure that the filed certificate of formation is accurate and complete. One item that sometimes people overlook is that the registered agent, for example, must have consented in a written or electronic form to serve as the registered agent of that entity. The address must be a physical address. You can't really have PO boxes. LLPs and LLCs both must also pay franchise taxes on a timely basis. This is an annual requirement in connection with the filing of the annual report with the Secretary of State, or in fact, I think it's the Comptroller's office. And most entities also have a requirement to file informational reports. As a default, LLCs with at least 2 members treated as a partnership. So an IRS election for specific tax treatment is not necessary, but doesn't hurt to file for good measure. This is on a form 8832, in which you kind of make an election for tax treatment. If an LLC is classified as a partnership, the federal tax return filing will be on form 1065, and it must distribute K-1s to its partners. So I mentioned a bit of a laundry list here in terms of corporate formalities, but as I said, these are important because the limited liability aspect of these entities can be compromised if there are lapses in documentation or the business does not remain in good standing in the jurisdiction that it operates in. We also recommend already existing partnerships and LLCs to revisit your organizational documents to ensure these were properly done and clean them up if needed, as well as ensure ongoing reporting obligations are completed in a timely manner. These issues become quite problematic if there are audits or if your business has grown and you consider selling your business because in M&A, just in my experience, these organizational documents are usually the first things that get diligenced. And while we'll cover this in more detail, things like due organization of the entity or its valid existence and good standing, these are fundamental representations that any selling business makes to a potential buyer. I didn't quite cover professional associations here. This was an afterthought. That entity choice is available as an option for certain professionals like physicians and dentists. There might be some in the audience here. But in the context of a partnership, there are certain restrictions, limitations, some additional reporting requirements that apply to jointly owned professional associations. So we do encourage consulting, with the legal counsel to ensure that the requirements are met. Next slide.
Sorry, Zainab, one more thing on this slide. We just wanted to reaffirm that all these different entity types that Zainab has covered can work with the partnership deed that has been prepared by Tijarat. So as you go over the partnership deed, that is supplementary to these different entity choices. Choosing any of these entities does not preclude you from using the Tijarat partnership deed.
And so we move on to the primary focus of today's presentation, which is to understand the various sections of the partnership deed. The Wazara template lays out the following sections that you can see on the slide. Murtaza Bhai will go over some of these in detail.
أعوذ بالله السميع من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سلام جميل شكرا زينب and Mullah Idris bhai. You dated me with my age, so shukran for the introduction. So the focus of the title apne aaj presentation che is the partnership deed sort of applied in real life. So हमारे सगला ने एक नियत हतु कि अपने खिदमत ना हिसाब से तिजारत राबिया અને અમે સગલા ઉમર કઝામાં भी members છે. Just wanted to share हमारो general knowledge and background on this document. So please, that is the maqsad. Ek request is just administratively कि सगला जे invitation से आवा छे ओ लोगों ने बे documents मला से by email. एक छे जे तिजारत राबिया नु जे basic principles of partnership नु document छे. I think बीजू छे operating in LLC memo. If आपने ना मिलू होय और आप invitation से ना join किया link से directly join किदू होय तो please आपनु email address मुकिले जो chat window मा हम इंशाल्लाह પછી end of the presentation में हमें सगला ने मोकल सु कोशिश करसु. Okay, so आज chat window छे if you just want to add your email address or हमारा local जमियत ना coordinator ने भी तमे कह सको છો. So अपने आ slide पर जे छे partnership agreement overview तो જે તિજારત રાબિયા અને મોલાની રઝા છે અને મોલાની ખુશી જે છે partnership deed અને એને Arabic માં એને બોલાવે છે એનું word is akad sharkat. અને akad sharkat નું ઘણું આલા માના છે. I mean આપ સુનો છે akad વાઝમાં shares the root term with akido. So it means to bind and to strengthen the bonds ek taraf se. In addition, it also refers to the highest level of contract in any legal system, which is a deed. So may agreement kidu che actually maro galti ati. Partnership deed is higher in legal justification than a partnership agreement by itself, and I'll explain why during the presentation. So our slide number these are the various sections, the headings that you have. And my presentation under slides under inshallah mein koshish kari iske certain sections mein thoda koshish here I'll just explain in a little bit more detail. But primary source je che Tijarat Rabia ni je kitab je che je kidi che excellent che. It cites to apna dawat na kitab Maulana Bayan Nurani Kalima ma se. To please koi bhi karwanu hoy, koi ne interest hoy, koi ne academic interest hoy to please aap parjo aaj booklet je aveli che. અને આપનો partnership bhi aap shuru karo to please do take the background from this document. Okay, next slide. So aaj booklet ma si I've just sort of during my presentation I'll be picking out certain citations and copy pictures and bachi maine in intro explain karis aap sagla na asta. So first, this page is very important and basically encapsulates the thesis of my presentation. As you can see here, the first clause is that before starting the partnership, the legal documents and the process which Jamaat Nander apply karwani partnership ni deed na raza se Maulana taraf se, it's very important that the partners discuss and present all information regarding the nature of the venture. And aaj note je che preparing a feasibility study or a business plan can serve this purpose. Me aksar clients चाहे we always recommend कि तमें शुरुआत ना पहला तमें business plan करो. because in under misunderstandings nu tame avoid kari sako છો, you can also define realistically suit hase and su bani sake છે, right? And putting it in again, it does not have to be a very long document, the business plan or the feasibility study, but it's important છે because in a stage pachi saglane can be on the same page. And je likhan ma hoy છે aksar આ presentation aap sunso, what is written down is much more clearer than what is agreed in passing. एक तो written માં benefit શું છે કે સગલા પઢી શકે છે એક જબાન અંદર. બીજું શું છે કે તમે કોઈ થર્ડ પાર્ટીને બી રઝાના સાહેબ હોય or જે બી હોય, they can understand કે તમારું પિલ્લાનું agreement શું છે. And the third is that it survives the test of time, right? જે orally હોય છે અક્ષર ભૂલાઈ જાય છે, sometimes એક conversationમાં તમે ભૂલી જાશો what you agreed to in the beginning of the conversation, okay? પછી હવે next છે જે 2.2 આપ પઢી શકો છો, that a partnership agreement, other benefits are it promotes a healthy working relationship and avoids unnecessary disputes. Third, Raza Mubarak is probably the most important thing. Je આવી જાય છે Raza Mubarak, so આ છે કે requirement છે કે તમે કોઈ નવી economic activity શરૂ કરો તો એના પહેલાથી મુફદ્દલ મૌલા અકમલાની રઝાથી તમે શરૂ કરો. એની બરકત એની એ જે આવશે તમારા બિઝનેસમાં આપ સગલા જાણો છો. But just to reiterate that the deed allows you to do that in a very systematic way to get the raza and apply it to your business. Okay. And finally, apne Zainab was talking about the different forms of entities which are available. So apnu partnership bhi ghanu important છે કે register થાય concerned government authorities ના સાથે, તમારા individual states માં અને federal level માં IRS ના સાથે, and obviously the partnership should be in accordance with the law of the land. આ ઘણું important છે. Next slide. So just to give some recaps, on the first one, I will just remind, without a feasibility study, a business plan, or a budget, you may have a brilliant idea, but with no real world execution or planning, it's simply a mirage. And a budget has a twofold purpose. Ekto, it very clearly sets out what you're thinking and how much money you will make, right? And at the end of the day, partnerships are in the business of making money, right? But it also gives you permission between the partners on how much is going to be spent. So, for example, if you said, look, our stationery budget is going to be $100, the working partner can then say, I have permission to buy $100 worth of stationery. Rather than going for every single request and every expenditure, you can have that preset. And Ananda Gunu Biju Sheikh, you should update this, at least annually in a meeting of the partners. Je partnership deed je wazarat se avilu chu is complete. It has all the requirements Zainabin had mentioned under the law, but it also allows you to add and customize for your specific partnership. So in under, if Dixo format, in under it allows for attachments to come through. So in ASI, important check if a particular partner wants to include something with Jena Pase important check, this should be done in year one, or whatever you may have at that point. It's very important you attach that for their benefit. Our next point check, every partner must read and understand what they have agreed to prior to starting. તો ઘણી વખત હોય છે કે લોકો કહે છે કે આ લીગલ ડોક્યુમેન્ટ છે કે શું જરૂરી છે ભરવાનું, but આ તમે શરૂ કરો તો it's very important that સગલાનું same understanding હોય, because you will be able to minimize disputes if everyone has read it. When I practiced overseas for a number of years, we had a lot of investors and clients from Japan. And ઓલોગોનું એક ઘણું અચ્છું લોકોના કલ્ચરના હિસાબથી એક ચીજ હતું કે જ્યારે લોકો મીટિંગમાં આવે તો ઘણી વખત most of them were very bilingual or trilingual, English બી બોલે અમારા સાથે ને મિડલ ઇસ્ટમાં તો અરબી બી ઘણા સગલા જાણે, but ઓલોગો બરાબરથી રોકે મીટિંગ અંદર કોઈ ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ પોઈન્ટ હોય જે લોયર આપી હોય કોઈ બીજા આપી હોય રોકે અને સગલાને જાપાનીઝમાં લોકો સમજાવીને વાત કરે. અને બીજું લોકોનું શું હતું કે ઘણા લોકો they would have to get approval from their head office back in Japan. તો સગલા emails હમે લીખે એને લોકો બરાબરથી ટ્રાન્સલેટ કરે, because they wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page. So you can understand what I'm trying to get to. And then finally, again, we talked about Raza Mubarak. In the partnership, there will be ups and downs. There will be times when you'll say, apne kem karsu. But again, I always say, come back to Raza Mubarak. That will right your ship. Okay, the next slide. So I'm going directly into the partnership deed. My sagla pages and sections I've not copied and pasted. I'm just picking out the relevant ones. So as section 3 che partnership deed ma legal status of the partnership. Hamna pilla presentation ma Zainabin went through the different types of partnerships that are available or different types of entities. And it is important. Anandar aksar so hai कि I advice should also come with your CPA. So it's very important that partnership now say accountant, CPA, enrolled agent, JB who has accounting background can advise you on the tax consequences of your decision. And it does vary. Most cases in Texas, formation malogana documents which Secretary of State of Texas ke 90% of formations in Texas are LLCs. So apnu jo presentation cha aaj will focus on the LLC, but that does not mean that the other types of entities are not relevant. It depends. Active business hoy, if you're planning on bringing in additional investors down the line, tomorrow foreign investors hoy. So inandar gono important hoy cha because jo foreign na si ave che partners ko muminin hoy ke bija gam si or overseas si ologono status is very different than an American citizen or American green card. So please do be in touch with your accountant. Okay, practice tip hame ke che ke ya likhilo che 3.2 under ke you have to be in compliance with the legal documents and the law of the land. May su kauchu ke hame extra ke your legal documents should not contravene the partnership deed. Je mola si avu hoy, make your legal documents reflect that. Under Texas law and under laws of most states, the LLC sukam istemal thai che because it's very flexible. It's a very flexible type of entity. In under tamare working partners rakwa hoy to rakhi sakocho, which are called managers. Tamare managing members rakwa hai, which means everyone is a working partner and a capital investor. And tame kari sakocho. And ghani biji cheezo tame flexibly kari sakocho. So that's why we do recommend muminin in many cases that LLCs is the right format. So make the law comply with Sharia. Aim to make so that there's never going to be a conflict. Okay. And biju suche ke apne I was talking about the attachments pilla. If there's something important, you want to make sure that it include Thai as an attachment. And akhir under Sheikh Mustafa Bhai Ziauddin samjhao se ke how that process happens. Okay. Next thing, very quickly through this. You have to tamaru jare raza vija se ane the deed is been approved. Abhi next step su che ke ave tamare registration karwanu che. So tame pilla register karso tamara state ma ja residence of the partnership. Most of them are very similar. The laws of different states. Texas Business Organizations Code governs, but all the states are basically very similar. Then after the LLC is formed with the state, then you file it with the federal status with the IRS. So in under EIN number issued hase ane, sometimes a classification is made on that application. And by that, if tamara paase partnership hoy, to IRS su ke che default che kya partnership will be treated as a partnership, which is a form 1065 if aap sagla familiar hoy. Sometimes you can also choose to be an S corporation, again with the advice of your accountant and your advisor, your legal advisor. S corporation is also popular. So an LLC can be a partnership for tax purposes, and an LLC can also be an S corporation for tax purposes. And just a reminder, federal and state securities laws che logo puche che LLC ma sukam securities tame bolo cho ato is about New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq. No, if you're issuing interest in an LLC, you are issuing securities. Okay, so I'm going to important. If you have any questions about this, I won't go into detail, but these will follow the entity until the end. Okay, and in a penalty sakat hoye if you violate the securities laws. Okay, so next slide. So each document if shayad aapne milu has say the operating in LLC in under documents je listed je che slide now par. I go into a little bit more detail. Okay, so first and foremost, if you form an LLC, and I'll show the difference. If you do a corporation, there's a slight distinction, but partnership deed has say with attachments. Okay, and Texas the nomenclature, the jargon is you have a company agreement for your LLC. So a company agreement can serve, the partnership deed can also serve as that. Okay. And it's important again that you follow the process that we have laid out. Certificate of formation ache je make you state na sate je document maleche ne keche ka avya register teguche entity ya. Some states mine a certificate of incorporation keche or articles of incorporation. But the next document is the resolution of the organizational meeting or unanimous consent. Agano important hoiche. It's not just a formality. This is the first meeting of the partners and of the working partners, of the managers and the members, that sets out that what the basic requirements are. હવે અક્ષર લોકો શું કરે છે well they do it properly લોકો કરે છે. Unanimous consent means કે સગલા meeting ના રાખી સગલા પરું they read the document and they have all signed off on it. So that is probably more common than having a physical meeting. But it's very important you have that, because if later on there's any question, सवाल આવશે કે first meeting માં કોણ actually agree કીધું, કોણ you agreed to the documents, you signed it, but કોણ આગળ વધુ actually, who actually went forward to do the things. Okay. Other resolutions, this one I'll just highlight the banking resolution. Aksar banks will ask you for these formation documents, and title companies will ask you for it. So you can prepare a banking resolution which gives signing authority to one or more partners to run under. Okay. Subscription agreement, abigano important che. If you have agreed to put money into the company or services or JB hoy, payment type illa. And a subscription agreement says that in lieu of the money you are contributing as a partner or as a member, you are getting this much interest in the LLC. Okay. Abhi important because the accounting records ma jase. Next, again, membership certificates is sorry, go back up. Sorry. Okay. The next two bullets we can ignore, but they're important company records ma. And Mara Pachi, Mariam Ben will talk about corporate governance and why these are important. Employment agreement. So also check if somebody is working beyond the capital investment or putting in special skills, right? Shayad that person might be drawing a salary from the partnership. So is really important that likhelu hoy and a pilla sij agreement hoy. Partnership deed my doesn't get put into it, separate agreement hoy che. But important che ke pilla em pachina koi ke well mara paase salary hatu, I was supposed to be paid. Employment agreement che. Okay. And in sate a be cheese che me just go if tomorrow company is inventing an idea or manufacturing something or something which is very complex or formulaic, you want everyone to sign an NDA, which means that J's non-disclosure of confidential information, and whatever is invented is for the benefit of the partnership, not for the individual person. Okay. If you have questions, again, you can ask any of us and we'll explain that. But ABH is going to be important. Aksar, je technology companies hoy che, je retail and restaurant companies hoy che, ologana paase je invention and je trade, je IP hoy che is more valuable than the actual physical assets. So you have to have this in place. Okay. And then finally, Akhirma, again, just a reminder about the securities laws. Okay. Next slide, please. Actually, distribution of profit and a loss. It's pretty clear. Next slide, Majaso. Right? Next slide, please. Okay. So distribution of profits. Again, everything should match. We should not have a position where partnership didma there's a certain split of profits. Legal documents ma biju split hoy and but taxes ma third split hoy. I have seen it in practice and it is a very bad disaster. It either means that you have defrauded each other, you've defrauded the partnership deed process, again, not Muminin, but you defrauded each other or you've defrauded the IRS, and those are not good positions to be in. And you can always update profits. Those are all things. Annual meetings are very good times to go through this. In fact, partnership deed ma likhilu che ke saglane has every partner has a right to request the documents, and it should be shared. That is also Texas law. Partnership accounting is very important. Okay, ghani wakat payroll barabar logo kare che, bookkeeping, but wachma je partnership nu je accounts hoy che, they're called capital accounts. Those should also be kept up to date. Okay. I put a citation to a book, Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. It's become very popular. Some of you may have heard of it. But many ways that people think about it is revenue or sales minus expenses equals profits. So, inu thesis suche, sales minus profit is what you're left over. So it's a very good way of looking at generally any enterprise. Okay. And ek rule che profits je thai can be allocated differently than the capital contributions. Next slide, please. Losses, again, very similar to profits. Ek important exception che ke partners capital investment can so like let's say for example an example apo ke be partners che ek $50,000 muke che and ek $30,000 muke che. Okay. And the 30,000 a partner is going to be working more in the business, spending more of the day-to-day time. So they can agree to split the profits 50-50. But losses cannot be split 50-50. So kam ke one partner has put more money in. So then the split would have to be 50-30, or 5/8 to the loss, to the 50,000, and 3/8 to the smaller capital investor. Okay. And a checkpoint, if the working partner causes a loss and does not follow the partnership deed, then bija partners can hold him or her responsible for that loss. Okay. I total nano exception to the general rule. Okay, next slide, please. I'm not going to go through in detail, but I'm going to important share. This will help you put together a budget, and it tells you the different rules and expenses and suit. Okay. Go on. Okay. Have section 8, which is rights and terms and conditions of a partnership. So you must see I've picked 3 of the conditions, but there are additional ones. So please, if you get a time, to please go through those. And again, it again recommends draft a business framework, which is that feasibility study, the business plan, and how the operating structure will be. Okay, will there be meetings on everything? Will the working partner have a ability to make certain decisions? Okay, go to the next slide, please. Okay, and so I'll just go through this. So stress the need for a business framework. Again, I've said it many times, and it shouldn't be like, if you remember in the old days, there was an infomercial that said, set it and forget it. You don't want to do that. You want to set it and just do it. Okay. I check if a partner breaches Sharia, this is one of the conditions. The partners can take actions against that person. So they may be breaching Sharia in one kisamsi in the partnership, right? If they unfortunately signed up for something which had riba, or they're committing illegal acts without the knowledge of the other partners, this deed and the agreement of the partner should be clear on that they will stop it. Okay. एक बीजू किस्म से है कि तुम्हारा partner जो शरीक जे छे इना पर you have a lot of rights and हक भी छे ने obligations भी छे. ये अपना जनाब आमिल साहब से पूछी सको छो ने खिदमत गुजार घणो मुठ्ठू डरो जो छे कोई इना partners ना वचमा. Okay, so you can help your partner to do the right thing. So this is a good time to have that conversation. Pilla siege. Okay. And I think every presentation that I try to make, I always say, consider the mental health of your partners. To AB tamay ghanu madad kari sako. So health, physical health, and mental health. Okay. The last 2 points, sorry. Reserve matters. What that means is that you can say that certain important decisions have to be decided by everyone. But certain day-to-day decisions, which are not as important, they can be delegated to the working partner. And Mariam Bain will go into detail about different titles you can give. Everyone should share the responsibility of administering the partnership, right? But you can say that individuals have certain rights and obligations in addition to that. Okay. And then finally, if Tamara partnership na wachma, it's important that you talk about non-competes, right? Ke koi partner territory ma or kisam no business ma na kari sake, e bhi agree thai sake cha within reason, but kari sako cho. Permitted transfers, if you are allowing a family member to come into the business, right? Pillas, you can get an agreement. A Razana sate approved taito tame kari sako cho. Okay. And if you have future plans, ke business man tame expand karwana hoy. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Mariam Bey.
Mariam Bey, unmute for sure.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Salams, everybody. I will be giving the part of the presentation just about corporate governance, and what it is, why it's important. And actually, now, I think Murtaza Bhai and Zainabin have kind of given you sprinkles of it a little bit, but they haven't kind of gone into detail about what corporate governance is and why it's important. So first and foremost, this is something that is often overlooked, especially I think apne small business shuru kare she, a business always starts off like, just you in your house or your apartment or your garage, just trying to make some money. And it's never really starts off as a formal thing. And it often takes flight very quickly. And what ends up happening is these things get overlooked. And it's fine in the beginning when you're just starting up and it's just you, if you don't have a ton of organization, corporate governance. But as you start growing, this is something that's really important to keep in mind and to keep up with, for two main reasons. One, Billa, this gives your company a kind of framework to grow and move forward. You will reach a halting point in your business where things will just be, it's too much. We cannot progress. Like there's demand, there's people who want to buy, or, we have customers, but we don't have the capacity or the ability or the structure or framework to be able to grow our business. And that often ends up happening because the business has grown too fast and there is just so much disorganization internally that you can't even start thinking about how you're going to fix all that. So you just keep running it as you have it. And then you have all this potential that's untapped for growth because you're just not able to find the time to do that. So it's important to start corporate governance very early in your business so that when you are ready for growth, you're going to be prepared for it. Secondly, it gives your investors and your vendors and customers a sense of what your business is doing, and it increases their trust in the operations and profitability of your business. If I see a completely disorganized company that doesn't even know what tomorrow is going to look like, I'm not going to feel comfortable investing in that company. But if I get a weekly email update from the managers of that company, okay, here's what we're doing on the project that you've invested in, et cetera, this is how we're structured, this is, how we're going to use your money, that makes me feel way more trusting of that business. So corporate governance and having good paperwork, having good communications with your investors and vendors can improve your ability to receive funds from investors and receive business from customers and vendors. This also leads into eventually, I think I've already touched on these in my first 2 points, but eventually, a big transaction karu hai, you want to raise equity because you want to significantly grow your business. You want to take out a loan, or you want to sell your business because you've reached a point where you're like, okay, I'm ready to retire, or this has grown enough and I want to give it away and take the profits and move on. Having had good corporate governance will make that whole process a lot easier. And I'll touch on this in more detail, but the corporate governance ends up being, unfortunately, the biggest issue when we do deals and you realize that the clients can't diligence each other properly because they don't have the data internally to produce, to show that this is what our numbers are, this is what our books look like. And that creates so many delays in the process of selling or buying a company or an asset. And you just don't want to end up there because it ruins the relationships between the seller and the buyer. And if it's a long-term partnership, it gets really muddy. So I've already touched on this, but bad corporate governance will result in a lack of trust from potential future investors, vendors, and customers, and will create more doubt with respect to companies' operations and profitability. The next slide. The two most important corporate governance practices for any business, especially about a future fundamental transaction or a future exit, these are things you want to be doing from the very beginning that will help you make sure that you're ready for a big transaction in the future, or equity raises or other types of stuff like that, big projects. And today, because we have computers, it makes it really easy to do these things and not have a bunch of paper flying everywhere. You just create a folder on your computer called corporate minutes and another folder called expenses or profits and losses or finances, and everything should be there. You can save it up on a drive. I'm sure all businesses have some type of drive or system where you're keeping track of documentation. The first is minutes. And Murtaza touched on this when he talked about the formation of an LLC. You're going to have organizational resolutions. So, but everyone will sign a piece of paper that says, we have formed this company, these are the basic rules and principles of the company, and we agree to this formation. That's the first big major business decision you'll be taking when you start your business. Bad, you might enter into a big material contract. You want to record entry into that contract, or you might hire 6 or 7 employees. Things like that are major structural or business changes. You want to keep track of them in minutes. And it's as simple as, writing on a piece of paper, here's the date, today's date, we approved these actions, we're attaching these documents that we have approved. So you can attach the purchase agreement, you can attach the employment agreements, etc. And everyone signs that piece of paper, you scan it up and you save it up, and it's done. This is really important because later on, when you're trying to tell somebody about your business or the big things that you've done, you're trying to raise money for your business, you're trying to do a project. If people ask about, well, when did you do this? Okay, I have the exact date because I wrote the minutes down. You know, I know exactly what year and time I did this. I can track the growth from that time. The second is a P&L or, you know, a financial statements sheet. Most small businesses will just keep like a P&L or a books and records. But as you grow, probably you should start creating proper balance sheets, proper income statements, cash flow statements. And you should start getting those audited if you're a much, much bigger business. Like I'm talking in the millions profitability. But to begin with, you just want to simply keep track of every month kitla paisa aavi raha chhe andar and kitla paisa bahar jai raha chhe. And not just, you know, approximate numbers, but break it down into, okay, I'm paying this much to my employees on payroll. I'm paying this much for the electricity bills. I'm paying this much for that. This will help you in the long run see your growth and be able to advertise your business, be able to sell your business, be able to convince someone to invest in your business. If you have your numbers very clearly laid out from the beginning, you can show your growth and you can pull financials more easily. You can pull projections more easily. And it doesn't take more than 10 or 20 minutes, you know, at the end of a month to just pull those numbers into an Excel file, maybe a couple hours if you've got complicated ins and outs. But it is really important to keep track of these. And go to the next slide. Okay. So part of corporate governance, which I've already touched on, is investor relations. One really easy way to keep up with your investors, and I'm talking more about have tamari company che, and you have like 3 or 4 managers, or you have 3 or 4 shareholders, like people who own interests in your LLC. Say you are running the business, but you've got like financial sleeping partners who are funding that business for you. They're going to want to know pretty regularly, you know, how is the business doing? What's going on? You know, is my money being put to good use? I have a ghana logo paise, you know, 5 or 6 partners, hoiche, ghana logo paise 40, 50 partners, hoiche, if they're doing a big project and everyone's investing in that project. And other people, it's just 1 or 2 members that, you know, are fully involved and operate the business. This piece of my presentation is more targeted towards people who have partners that are not involved in the day-to-day operations, but who are funding the business. So like sleeping partners. For these types of partners, you want to prepare management reports on a regular basis. So have it our business is active now, or it's a pretty simple, you know, business. Say you're just selling a product or something. You might want to do this on a quarterly basis. But if you've got a big project going on or something new is happening, you might want to increase that frequency to a monthly basis. And the management report, kali simply, you know, it can be an email, it can be a Word document. It doesn't have to be complicated. Management report makes it sound really nice, but really you're just going to tell them, okay, here's where we are as of today. Here is, you know, what our financials look like as of today. Here's what happened in this last period, the ups and downs, and here's what we're doing next to correct anything that was down or to continue improving on the stuff that's been going well. And then usually if you have a lot of investors, you want to have one person designated as your investor relations contact person. So you can have their name at the bottom of the management report so that your investors or your shareholders know who to reach out to. Questions, or if they don't understand something that's going on. It helps you to streamline this way the external communications. You know, on the day-to-day, you're operating your business. You're not thinking about, oh, you know, what is this investor going to think? But you're just trying to operate your business, make money, and save it from, you know, collapsing or something bad happening. And so you need to have ekjan designated that's always thinking like, okay, how am I going to frame this to the investors? How are the investors going to respond to this? What questions are they going to have? How am I going to keep them happy? Because your investors are really important. They're funding your business. So it's important to have 1 or 2 people who are set people who this is their job and they're thinking about this the right way. And you're also going to be able to that way communicate in one manner, and you're not going to have multiple messages from different people of your business going out to your investors. It will help you control external communications. Okay, next slide. Okay, so jumping off of having an investor relations person, there are a couple of other types of heads or managers or, you know, point persons that you'll want to have in your business, depending on your size. But usually it's important to have someone designated on the employment matters or human resources, atake logo employee, vacation time, leave time, sick leave. Different employees function in different ways. You want someone who can manage all of that, be the point person for that. You'll want someone who's a day-to-day operations manager of it. The Maro business, like it's just a buy and sell. This might not be as relevant. You might have a sales manager. So this is just someone who is doing the actual nitty-gritty of the business, and who is overseeing the actual nitty-gritty of the business. Of course, you'll have employees and everything, but someone who all that information funnels up to, and they kind of know what's going on in that sphere of your business. And then the fourth would obviously be your accounts manager. So someone who can make those financial reports or profits and losses at the end of every month. Maybe someone who can help prepare the management report at the end of every month, who's keeping track of the money going in and out. And then one note is, of course, in a smaller business, you might have multiple hats on one person. So, one person might be your accounts and operations manager. It might be you who's just doing everything. But it's important to know what hat you're wearing when, so that you also don't mix up different roles within your structure. Because when you start growing and you hire someone and you're like, okay, I want you to do investor relations, or I want you to do human resources, you'll be able to say, okay, this is the thing I categorize as, operations or human resources. So I'm going to just shuffle it to you. Here's everything you need. Here's a couple of folders and you're good to go. Okay, next slide. Okay, the policies and procedures, this can be helpful and it cannot be helpful. And so I tend to go both ways on these. I tend to err on, don't put something in writing if you are going to have it constantly change. But it is good to have things in writing to set expectations with your employees, with your customers and vendors. So an employee handbook policy is really good if if this is going to be your policy on vacations, leave time, et cetera, and it's not changing. Or, it can change once every 6 months, but if you're someone who's, very person by person, your business is very small, I would not recommend putting a policy in place because it's going to lead to more confusion. Customer vendor policies, you might have a conflict of interest policy. If something comes in that's conflicting with another project that you're doing, how would you handle that? Would you break it off, give it to another employee? So the way you want to think about policies and procedures is just what is so set in stone in your mind that this is just how my business runs. There's no changing this, that you can put on a piece of paper and give to your employees. If there's anything that you have like that, put it on a piece of paper and put it up on your website, give it to your employees, because it not only helps your employees, but also customers and vendors understand more about your business, what you believe in, what your values are. And that's a way of marketing yourself also. So it depends on what it is that you're wanting to put on a piece of paper. It should be something that you're certain will not change for at least a few months, or that kind of defines you. For one example I'll give is a lot of big companies these days are coming out with ESG policies, which is environmental, social, and governance. And they're just these really blanket statements on how they support, the environment and carbon capture and zero emissions. Now, this can be a marketing strategy, right? If your business is a printing business and you can put out a policy that, we only use certain types of low toxins, inks, et cetera, et cetera. If you think that that's going to help you in marketing, these policies can be used in multiple ways. So it's always good to think about them. Okay, next. All right, so just a summary of corporate governance points. Overall, it's pretty simple. I've gone into a little bit of detail about a few things that you should and can be doing specifically. But as you're thinking about growing your business and corporate governance, you just have to keep in mind there are core principles of running a business that will make it attractive to external people, external stakeholders like your shareholders, your investors, your customers, and vendors. So this will help keep your business attractive to potential buyers and everyone who's not inside and in the weeds and knows it inside and out like you do. So you want to think about transparency and communication, risk management. So that's going back to recording every major decision that you take, because that is managing your risk in the future, any disputes between partners or investors. And then accountability. You want to keep yourself accountable by having your financial information recorded, by having that reviewed by third parties, so you can be sure of your growth and be sure that you're not misrepresenting anything to someone else, potential investor or buyer. And with that, I will turn it back to Idris Bhai and Murtaza Bhai to take us on to the next part of the presentation. Shukran.
Shukran. That was very good to hear. I did the same thing with the microphone myself. So aaj je thoda little bit, I wanted to just a little bit lighten the conversation, dispute resolution. No, आप सगला जानो छो अक्सर बयान में मोला फरमावे छे कि कोई मुमिन बीजा मुमिन ने ना ले जाए कोर्ट ना अंदर અને अपने अपने सिलत અને હસી બનીને આપણે રહી સગલા મુમિનીન in under ફાયદો છે તો એક જમાનામાં હતું કે ઘણા સગલા જે બુઝુર્ગો છે અને ઓલ્ડર જનરેશન રિમેમ્બર કે પાર્ટનરશિપમાં ઘણી વખત લોકો વાત કરે grandparents સગલા ઘણા લોકો older partnership was almost a bad word अपना community માં because it was associated with झगड़ाओ ઘણી વખત વિરાસતનો બી ઝઘડો થઈ જાય એના સાથે. It was not, when I remember growing up, we'd visit back home and partnership was not regarded. Molani Dwasi in the last 20 years that has changed with Burhanuddin Molla and Mufaddal Molani Nazarat now per. I mean, aaj partnership deed che, I will say from just anecdotally, even being involved in Jamaat under Kazaz, it has ઘણા કમ થઈ ગયા છે or actually ઘણી વખત થાતા બી નથી અને પોચે બી છે તો એકદમ quietly with the guidance of Janab Amil Sahab or બીજા Razana Sahibo, they're able to get resolved and it is good because ek mein quote tamare mein kaho from Abraham Lincoln and the president of America, persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. Point out to them how the nominal winner is often a real loser in attorney's fees, expenses, and waste of time. As a peacemaker, the lawyer has a superior opportunity of being a good person. So it frames up, and our slide number, I would just, if you are able to read it, I wanted to give some time to people to read it. Our partnership deed my included, che. And very important, that we apply this to every enterprise we have, right? And I will start niche si wakafa billahi shahida apne saglane lense che ke Allah is enough as a witness, right? So that should be enough, je samajhta hoy, that should be enough to understand, right? But the next paragraph upar je che, it reiterates कि अपने आ कुरान અને રસૂલાની સુન્નત से अपने मुताबिक करवाना છે એલે બેતની ફિક and the directives and teachings of Akamullah Sayyidina Mufaddal Saifuddin Tughrah Amir Sharif, and we hold Allah and his da'i as witnesses to this agreement. So that is also jene samajh aave to samjh lo ki every action you take, whether your partner knows about it or doesn't know about it, koi witness che khuda jane che and mola jane che, right? So just, I think if you understand that, you really don't have to get into complicated dispute resolution provisions and things like that. But I'm total guidance just to add, just some real life application that we see on the next slide. So ek to che ke disputes to are probably inevitable. I'm not quite recently I was talking to Sheikh Tahabai Raja Houston ma, and I go to actually jumla kido ke partnership is really individuals coming together. So if you have 3 individuals, you're going to have 3 different ways of doing stuff, but it's how you deal with those disputes that will mark you as a successful partnership. And I really appreciated that he had put it that way. So Tavanuche, the issue is came to me resolve karso disputes, right? I quoted that thing from Abraham Lincoln, and honestly, I do partnership litigation. Bharana logo na sate. It is very messy. It is very painful, and even if you win, you end up losing because you lose a partner, right? So there's no victory in having a dispute that's unresolvable, right? So one tip we say is first cool down. Kaffa gazabahu je che sagla suno che e hadith. I got important che, don't do something with a hot head. People will quit and do things when they don't mean it, and then they'll come back to regret it. So pilla to pilla tame karo ke cool down the jao, and then really look to see what the root cause of the dispute is. Okay, and then if you have done all the things that the partnership deed has required of you, that you have put in all of these things, you have done the corporate governance, you've done the minutes that Mariam bin Ketata, you've picked the right type of entity, you've done all of these things. Tame tomorrow partnership ne palilu che, to most likely the answer is in those documents and tamara discussions under. Okay, so if it has already been agreed, respect the agreement and go forward with it if bani sake. Impossible hoy koi situation ki tame kaho ke hame outa varas ma hame partnership karwana che North Korea ma, and in North Korea ma ku ban the you, and you cannot do that. That's different. But in most cases, already been agreed. Don't use this as an opportunity to redo the agreement. That's DOCO, right? If there's not an agreement there, think to see if you can come back to that same framework and come to an agreement. Because हमने तुम्हें solve कर सो and इन्हें apply कर सो तो तुम्हारा फायदा था से future में भी फायदा था से, okay? And आखिर के if it's not mutually resolved, दावत नुचे કે તમે રઝાના સાહેબના પાસે જઈ શકો છો, તમારા ગામના આમિલ સાહેબ એ કોઈને ડેલિગેટ કરી શકે છે, કોઈને મીડિયેટર અપોઇન્ટ કરી શકે છે, અને પછી ના થાય resolved in that situation, મોલામાસી રઝા પૂછાય છે, and it can go from there. So umur qaza can be a big support. Tijarat Rabia is actually your first resource in Tamara Jamaat Mahoy. So please Tijarat Rabia si jao, because you'll get good advice from people who have been there and done it to resolve these things. Okay. मैं एक चीज जस्ट कहूँ છું ને પછી आई थिंक शेख मुस्तफा भाई ઝિયાઉદ્દીન વાત કરવાના છે. આ તમારા ગૂગલ મીટના ઉપર એક મીટિંગ ડિટેલ્સનો આઇકોન છે, ઇટ્સ આઈ. તમે એના પર ક્લિક કરશો તો જે બે ડોક્યુમેન્ટ્સ જે મેન્શન થયા છે આ પ્રેઝન્ટેશન અંદર, at the bottom તમે ક્લિક કરી શકો છો and you can download those on your own computer or your phone. મીટિંગ ડિટેલ્સમાં છે ઓપરેટિંગ એન્ડ LLC મેમો એન્ડ પાર્ટનરશિપ બુકલેટ. ઓકે, અને એનાથી બસ આખિરમાં મેં દુઆ કરું છું કે મોલાની ઉંમર દરાજ અને દરાજ થાય, કે આપણા નાની રોજીમાં બરકત થાય, કે આપણા અકીદો મજબૂત થાય અને આપણા શરકતમાં ફાયદો અને થાય સગલાના આપણા પાર્ટનર્સ સાથે. આમીન વ રબ્બુલ આલમીન. શેખ મુસ્તફા ભાઈ.
Hello, thank you, Mullah Murtaza bhai. Ganu fine explain kidu tame resolution ne badu. अपने જે પાર્ટનરશિપ અગ્રીમેન્ટ ડીડ કરીએ છીએ એનો પર્પસ એમ છે કે મોલાની ખુશી હાસિલ થાય, અને મોલાની ખુશી એમ છે કે મોમિન કોર્ટમાં ના જાય. અને બેસ્ટ ટાઈમ પાર્ટનરશિપ ડીડ સાઇન કરવાનું તિવારે છે જેવારે વેન લાઈક તમે ઓલરેડી પાર્ટનરશિપ માં હેપીલી કરી રહ્યા છો. ઘણા જણ એમ કહેતા હોય કે અમે તો વર્ષોથી કરી રહ્યા છે પાર્ટનરશિપ. So this is the best time કે જે બધું when everybody is happy, so that's the best time to do like sit down and do some agreement. અને मैं आप જે સૈયદના છું શેખ મુસ્તફાભાઈ ઝિયાઉદ્દીન, અને અમે ખિદમત કરીએ છીએ આપણે તિજારત રાબિયામાં અને પાર્ટનરશિપનું. ને મારા સાથે અબ્બાસભાઈ ખંભાતી છે જે હ્યુસ્ટનમાં અમે બેજન્ટ કરીએ છીએ. યુએસના બધા સિટીઝમાં મેજર સિટીઝમાં ઓથોરાઇઝ પર્સન છે વઝારતના જે પાર્ટનરશિપનું ફોર્મ જોઈ છે અને પછી એ લોકો વઝારતમાં અપલોડ કરે છે. મેં અબ્દે સૈયદના મુસ્તફા હ્યુસ્ટનમાં ના પાર્ટનરશિપ્સ જોઉં છું. અને अपने प्रोसीजर एम છે કે जब पार्टनर्स સાથે બેસે ને આપસમાં એક બેસિકલી આપસમાં મ્યુચ્યુઅલ અગ્રીમેન્ટ રાખી લે બનાવે. ઇટ કેન બી ઇન અ વર્ડ ફોર્મ ઓર સમથિંગ. અને જે બેસિક કીઝ જે અગ્રી કરે છે અને પછી આપણે એને ઓવરવ્યૂ કરીએ છીએ, અને જે ઓબ્જેક્ટેબલ ક્વેશ્ચન્સ હોય છે લાઈક હોય છે તો વી ડિસ્કસ, એન્ડ નહીં તો પછી વી મૂવ ઓન અને પછી વઝારતમાં અપલોડ કરીએ છીએ. અને વઝારતમાં પછી એ લોકોને કંઈ સવાલ આવે છે બિફોર ધ પ્રોસેસ તો એ લોકો ક્વેશ્ચન પૂછે છે, નહીં તો પછી સાહેબોમાં અરજ થાય છે અને પછી એની સોફ્ટ કોપી આવે છે આપણા પાસે. હવે સોફ્ટ કોપી જ્યારે આવે છે એના પછી જે પાર્ટનર્સ હોય એને આમિલ સાહેબના સામે હાજર થવાનું અને આમિલ સાહેબના સામે સાઇન કરવાનું અગ્રીમેન્ટ. અને એમાં બે વિટનેસ જોઈએ છે. મરદો હોય તો બે મરદો, અને બહેરાઓ હોય તો બે બહેરાઓ ઇઝ ઇક્વલ ટુ વન મરદો. સો લાઈક એમાં એક મરદ હોય ને બે બહેરા હોય, સો ઇટ વિલ બી કાઉન્ટેડ એઝ વન વિટનેસ. બે બહેરાઓ ઇઝ ઇક્વલ ટુ વન વિટનેસ. સો એમ આપણે શું કરીએ છીએ તિજારત મેમ્બર્સના સિલેક્ટ કરીએ છીએ. કોઈ અગર આપને પોતાના વિટનેસ બી લાવવા હોય, યુ આર મોસ્ટ વેલકમ. અને આપણે જે અગ્રીમેન્ટ છે આપણે બિટવીન આપણા મોમિનીન જ થાય છે કે અગર કોઈ મુસ્લિમ હોય યા કોઈ નોન મુસ્લિમ હોય તો એનામાં આ પાર્ટનરશિપ આપનું દાવતનું પાર્ટનરશિપ નહીં થઈ શકતું. And તમે કઈ બી આનો રિલેટેડ કઈ ક્વેશ્ચન હોય તો અબ્દેસેદનાને કોન્ટેક્ટ કરી શકાય છે. મેં હ્યુસ્ટનમાં છું અને કોઈ આપને કઈ ક્વેશ્ચન્સ હોય પ્લીઝ ફીલ ટુ ફ્રી આપને કોઈ ક્વેશ્ચન હોય. આપને ક્વેશ્ચન્સ લઈ રહ્યા છે આપને ઇદ્રીસભાઈ?
હા શુક્રન. શેખ મુઝાભાઈ આપને ને કોઈના પાસે બી શેખ મુઝાભાઈ કોઈના પાસે બી તમારું કોન્ટેક્ટ ઇન્ફોર્મેશન ના હોય તો પ્લીઝ જસ્ટ પોસ્ટ ઇટ ઓન ધ chat તો બધાને કોઈ ક્વેશ્ચન્સ હોય તો તમને કોન્ટેક્ટ કરી શકે. તો એનો ટાઈમ થઈ ગયો છે તો એવરીવન अपने जो attorneys છે will all stay on for questions. Just last एक point पर end करूँ तो is अपने this entire presentation we've talked about तमने corporate governance करो to help you when you expand your business or के dispute आयो तो तमने easy पर disputes resolve कराने or to just avoid the dispute. So all of this is basically short-term pain, long-term gain. तमने लग सके कि नहीं चाल से हमना मैं नहीं करूँ I mean, I'm up name million to discuss and the next month कर so and it'll keep pushing. You don't want to take out that 1 hour because then I'm not business and expand career. That will come back to bite you in the long term. It'll be more expensive. Either jo dispute title, yeah, to jim Mariam bin kita if you're seeking investment or you're selling your business, yeah, JB karta ho, it's going to become very expensive. I, along with everyone else, most of the attorneys here practice in acquisitions. Ne ghana small companies ma, we have to kind of go back and fix what wasn't taken care of earlier. And because we have to fix it, it's a lot more time consuming, a lot more expensive, and a lot bigger headache. So just save yourself the headache in the future. It's just better to meet with your partners often, meet with your business people often, keep written records of everything. And inshallah, I've never done no business kamyab thai. Now finally, beginning of look at this is the first in a series of presentations. Awalu partnership deed na operato. Inshallah, future ma will go over mergers and acquisitions basics, not just for purchasing, expanding, or selling your business, succession planning for your business, and disciplined business operation and avoiding common pitfalls to prevent lawsuits or other things that can be a detriment to your business. तो आखिर में अपने दुआ करिए कि खुदा ताला आकामुल अनीमो शरीफ तारोज क़यामत दराज ने दास करे અને કોઈને બી કઈ સવાલ હોય તો અમે સગલાયા છે. And કોઈને સવાલ હોય તો chatમાં બી મૂકી શકે છે or unmute થઈને પૂછી શકો છો or raise your hand. We'll stay on for 2-3 minutes. ને કઈ ના સવાલ હોય તો we'll end the presentation. Okay, I think no one wants to ask any questions. So please, if you have any questions later, Sheikh Mustafa Ziauddin contact kari sako છો for process and Tijarat Rabia, the attorneys at Amullah Mutsabai, Mariam bin Zainab bin, and Idris Motiwala. Please feel free to contact us at any time. Shukran.